Even though Gabriel is gone, each one of those photographs shows Gabriel talking, asking, "Why would you do this to me?" These photographs show the aftermath of an alleged abuse claim toward 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez by the defendant, his parents. Bruises on his legs. It also showed the burned spoon mark and the ligature mark clearly, and in this photograph, some of the injury to the neck as far as the choking. The injuries to the chin and also show the fact he has injuries from whip marks from a cord on both sides of his chest. It also shows that all of his fingers were injured. This was made clear in the 2012 Netflix original series, The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez, that all he was trying to do was defend himself. A firefighter on the scene was asked to approach the stand. He proclaims, "The very first thing I even remember is there was maybe a 10-year-old boy that was outside, and I believe it was early in the morning, and I just thought it was strange that a 10-year-old boy was outside at that time in the morning. He was directing us up the stairs. And when you say we, who was with you? Sean Fox was my partner on the squad that day. People call firefighter and paramedic Sean Fox to the stand," says the judge. "Did you see Gabriel in the bedroom?" "I did. He was on the floor, face up. I could tell he was in what appeared to be severe distress. I instructed the male subject of the house to pick up the boy and bring him out in the living room. We noticed the child was not breathing. He had no heartbeat, so he was in cardiac arrest, and we started CPR. At that point, it was a team effort. Then we started compressions, we started ventilations, and we gave medication to try to restart the heart. I remember the call because of the nature of the call itself. What came in as a full arrest of a child turned out to be the most haunting call I have ever seen," closes Fox. "The amount of damage inflicted to a child is something I could never imagine, let alone see right in front of me with the helpless feeling of being able to do absolutely nothing about it. These medical expert witnesses obviously hold great importance to the court system, which emphasize the heavy dependence they have on each other in circumstances such as this one. This collaboration is the reason for success behind the eyes of the people, because both parties play such a vital role in the search for the truth. We all search and strive for in times like these. We want to know what happened, and we want to know why. There were multiple medical expert witnesses used to clarify observations on the scene and connect them to the aspects of medicine and law to be able to determine a cause of death for Gabriel Fernandez. Being a medical expert witness involves the investigation of a major case, such as Gabriel's, has rigid guidelines in all processes based on their specific role in the case. There are specific guidelines during a testimony and the consequences of not following these guidelines. The role is outlined with specific guidelines for various reasons, the main one being to maintain consistency and credibility across all different cases involving these special witnesses. Primarily, the role of these expert witnesses, especially those with medical expertise, highly varies depending on their needed use in the contrasting medical litigations or cases. Their main focus, though, is to examine the material facts and observations, in this case, the condition of Gabriel, of a medical-related case. They then usually prepare a statement to present their findings to the court and jury that they will use to release an appropriate result of the case, which is also called a verdict. Regardless of the case itself, they are always expected to be upheld to the same scientific and ethical standards in each step of the case, because one wrong word can end it all for the worse. Closure could not be restored, justice could not be served. As stated by Nancy Epstein in the 2018 edition of Surgical Neurology International, she wrote an article shortly titled "Implications for Code of Ethics of Professional Medical Societies" that describes criteria for medical expert witnesses in the courtroom. The first predominant characteristic being judged for consideration of being a witness is familiarity with the professional standards and an ability to interpret these standards for a jury. It meant knowing what to do and what not to do, and always adhering regardless of the circumstances at hand. The guidelines begin with the information involved in the affidavit, also known as a testimony. Overall, this should be solely based on scientific evidence or professional reasoning, never personal opinion. This guideline is based on a Supreme Court called the Daubert Standard that excludes the use of unqualified evidence by a list of set criteria developed to determine the quality of a piece of evidence. In the testimony of both firefighters, for example, they were asked to state their years of experience in their field of occupation, which is the first part of the information needed to be included in the testimony. The answer to this statement is the make or break of credibility, especially in cases such as this one involving the life wrongfully taken from a child. So the second part of this written or verbal testimony is the factual basis of information they are here to provide, which in this case were the observations made of the victim on the scene of the crime. Fox and Cermak say things similar to abrasions, strangulation, marks, bite marks, bruises, etc. Fox and Cermak say things similar to this, and they provide a viable enough explanation of their immediate observations which will eventually help the jury come to a conclusion. Now, information given to the jury by these paramedics might have seemed to support the cause, but it could still have eventually been determined inadmissible or prohibited for various reasons. There are 2 criteria that have to be met for evidence to be allowed to even be considered in the court system, developed by the Supreme Court, highlighted in their Legal Information Manual. First, it must assist those involving in understanding the evidence presented to determine a result. Each piece of information being presented has to be considered aloud by the set criteria to be able to be used and consider it the truth. In the above testimony, both medical professionals explained not only their immediate observations, but hinted at its relevance. Second, this testimony must come from the testifying witnesses and that witness only. No persuasion from either party is allowed, and to push information through the witness that is not from the witness is not allowed. These guidelines are complementary. Even slightly disobeying a small aspect of either can probably cause the entire overview of evidence to be considered inadmissible, which deems testimony worthless. If at any point they stated or hinted towards something not relevant, it would put them in jeopardy as well as the information. These guidelines are set for a reason, and it has been obvious in the past of the horrible consequences, even in the slightest fault. Even the smallest mistake could result in a much larger consequence, but telling the truth and maintaining respect isn't difficult. It is a matter of what lies below the surface of these words that actually matters. The court and justice system thrives on consistency and reliability. The intricate guidelines promote these characteristics to prevent inconsistencies and promote honesty and testimonies that create a standard for evidence in the courtroom today. If your life rested in the hands of another in the courtroom, wouldn't you be happy if these guidelines were put in place? How would you feel if you knew the one person who could save your life ruined it because they lied on the stand? Because I know how I would feel.